It's raining on a tiny Greek island on the afternoon of October 20th, 1968. Inside a small candlelit chapel, a priest is getting ready for a wedding. And outside, standing in the wet, are about 50 journalists who've come across the water for one thing, a single look at the bride. Because the bride is the most famous woman on the planet. 2 children carry the candles into the chapel, a little boy, 7, a little girl, 10. And here's the first strange thing. Those 2 children are the son and daughter of a murdered American president. Their father was John Fitzgerald Kennedy. And the woman about to get married, in secret, in the rain, on this rock in the sea, is Jacqueline Kennedy. So the question is, who does a woman like that marry? After the whole world watched her husband shot beside her in Dallas, who was the man waiting at the front of that chapel? His name is Aristotle Onassis. This is a man who built the biggest private fleet of ships on Earth, who married the most admired woman alive, right after the one Kennedy, who could have stopped it was gunned down in a hotel kitchen, who kept a mistress 2 streets from his wife, and who died with his own lawyers still writing up the divorce papers meant to humiliate her. None of that is an accident. All of it goes back to one afternoon when he was 16, watching his city burn. Let's start there. Chapter 1. The Boy Who Watched His City Burn. Aristotle Onassis was born around 1906 in a city called Smyrna in what's now Turkey. And I say around on purpose because even his birthday is a mystery. The record's burned. He gave different years on different passports. One historian thinks he quietly shaved a few years off to dodge the draft. Remember that, a man whose own birthday was up for negotiation. The habit of bending the facts to suit the moment started at the very beginning, and it never stopped. His father was a wealthy tobacco merchant. The boy grew up comfortable, safe, part of a Greek community that had lived on that coast for thousands of years. It felt permanent. Chapter 2. From refugee to the largest fleet on Earth. In 1923, this stateless kid gets on a boat to Argentina with, depending on who you believe, somewhere between $60 and $250 to his name. That's it. He works nights as a telephone operator. He runs a little tobacco business by day. And then watch how fast this goes. Within 6 years, he's an Argentine citizen. Not long after, he's got his first $1 million. Then he does the thing that makes him. It's the Great Depression. The whole world is terrified, and the price of ships has collapsed to almost nothing. And while everyone else is running for cover, Onassis buys. He picks up his first 6 cargo ships for pennies on the dollar. From there, it just climbs. Freighters, then oil tankers, then bigger tankers, then bigger ones, until one year he orders 17 supertankers at once. 17. About 20 years after stepping off that boat with nothing, he owns the largest privately held shipping fleet on the planet. Writers compared it to a national navy. But here's the question you should be asking. How? How does that happen that fast, that clean? And the answer is, it wasn't clean. In 1950, the CIA started looking into Greek shipping magnates in New York who were moving cargo on American-built ships. Not just for America and its allies, for North Korea and China. During the Korean War, at its bloodiest, it ended in a settlement. In 1955, Onassis agreed to pay $7 million, and 6 of his companies pleaded guilty, but look closely at what happened to the man himself. Onassis walked away with no conviction on his own name. The corporations took the hit. The man stayed clean, and that became the blueprint for his whole life. Put the liability on the structure. Keep the man spotless. His companies were scattered across half a dozen countries, each picked to dodge a different tax or law. Depending on which document you read, Aristotle Onassis was 3 different people. That's $7 million fine, huge for its day. For him, it was a parking ticket. He'd learned in Smyrna the world could be bought out of. The US government had just proved it to him again, at scale. Chapter 3. The Floating Stage. Now that he had the money, he needed a stage, and he built one. He named it the Christina O after his daughter, and it wasn't really a yacht. It was a 500-foot advertisement for what unlimited money buys when a man stops caring what anyone thinks. He started with an old Canadian warship, bought for scrap price, then poured 4 years and millions into it. When most rich men measured their boats in a few dozen meters, this thing ran to about 150, with a crew of more than 50. Less a yacht than a private navy ship. Inside, a swimming pool whose mosaic floor rose up on hydraulics and turned into a dance floor. Taps that ran both fresh water and seawater. An operating room and a bar. And I have to tell you about the bar, because it tells you exactly who this man was. The footrest were made from the teeth of sperm whales. And the bar stools were covered in leather made from whale foreskin. Some of those whales came from his own fleet, the one the Peruvian Navy intercepted in 1954 for hunting in their waters, and fined him $3 million. Same story as always. Sail in, take what you want, until a navy shows up. So he hunted the whales, skinned them, upholstered his furniture in the most intimate part of them, and then built a little comedy routine out of making guests sit on it. He'd seat a famous woman, a Grace Kelly, a Greta Garbo, lean in, and tell her she was now sitting on the largest one in the world. And that's the man. On that boat, surrounded by famous people who were only there because he was paying for it, Aristotle Onassis became most completely himself. Everybody who stepped onto that deck became a prop in a show about him. But this floating stage was about to host one single cruise, one Mediterranean summer, that would blow up 2 marriages at the same time. Stick around. Chapter 4. The Voice He Broke. In 1957, at a party in Venice, Onassis met the most famous opera singer alive. Her name was Maria Callas. She was, at that point, probably the most disciplined artist in the world. That voice, the one that defined opera for a decade, wasn't a gift, it was built. Out of relentless work, isolation, a life organized entirely around the next performance. 2 years later, summer of 1959, Onassis arranged a cruise on the Christina O. On the guest list, Winston Churchill, Maria Callas, Callas's husband, and Onassis's own wife. By every account, the cruise is where the affair started. His own obituary put it bluntly, it began with gossip linking the two of them, and by the time it ended, both marriages were finished. Within weeks, Callas left her husband. The next year, Onassis's wife filed for divorce. But here's the tragedy underneath the romance. Watch what happened to that voice. Because the discipline that built it needed the old life, the rehearsal, the quiet, the calendar built around the music. And life with Onassis was nightclubs in Monte Carlo, and dinners on the yacht, and travel that ran on his schedule, never hers. By the early 1960s, critics who'd called her the greatest singer of her generation started writing about a decline they couldn't explain. But the cause wasn't a mystery. The cause was sitting in the front row at her performances. He had pulled her out of the only life that could sustain that voice, and the voice was giving out in response. She's the first woman in this story destroyed just by being near him, and she will not be the last. In fact, 16 years later, she'll still be there 2 streets from his deathbed. Remember her. Because Jackie's about to walk into the exact same trap. Chapter 5. Inside the Kennedy Orbit. So how does a Greek shipping tycoon end up inside America's most powerful family? The same way he got everywhere. Piece by piece. Person by person. First, before Jackie, there was her sister. Through the early 1960s, while Jacqueline Kennedy was First Lady, Onassis was having an affair with her younger sister Lee. That's well documented. and it put him right on the edge of the Kennedy world. The family hated it, Robert Kennedy especially. A lot of the juiciest quotes here rest on a single writer, so hold them loosely, but the hostility itself is all over the record. Then came Dallas, November 22nd, 1963. And here's a detail that stops you cold. On the night of the state funeral, while the nation was burying its president, Aristotle Onassis was a guest inside the White House. He wasn't invited to Arlington. He didn't go to the service. He just sat in the nearly empty house while America mourned, and afterward was welcomed into the widow's private rooms. Why was he even there? Not because anyone wanted him. Because, as always, he'd made himself the man with the resources a grieving woman might need. There are even reports, from a single shaky source, that in the years after, cash moved toward Jackie in envelopes. The specific claim is thin, but the picture around it is solid. A president's widow, real money pressure, an expensive life to keep up, and a very rich man standing close by. It's the Smyrna lesson again, scaled up to the biggest stage on Earth. He spent his way into the room. He'd been doing it since 1922. Chapter 6. 4.5 months. Now I want to give you 2 dates, and I want you to just sit with the space between them. June 5th, 1968. In the kitchen corridor of a Los Angeles hotel, moments after winning the California primary, Robert Kennedy is shot. He dies the next day. He was 42. Whatever the truth of Bobby's relationship with Jackie, and there are ugly claims there that rest on a writer who's been thoroughly discredited, so I won't hand you certainty I haven't earned. One plain fact remains. His death removed the last Kennedy standing between Jackie and Aristotle Onassis. 4.5 months later, October 20th, 1968, she married him. 4.5 months. That gap is the whole story, and the people around her knew it. Jackie kept the decision so secret she told no one. Not even her own sister. Lee found out about the engagement not from Jackie, but from Onassis himself, who phoned her on holiday to invite her to the wedding. Think about what he was asking. Lee had been his lover. And now he was calling to ask her to come stand at the wedding of her own sister to him. She was so upset she called a friend and described it as a betrayal beyond imagination. And she came anyway. She stood there in that little rain-soaked chapel. And that wound between the sisters never fully healed. Decades later, when Jackie died, her will left Lee a single cold sentence and nothing else. The bride who told no one had planned exactly who would be informed and who would be shut out. In the engagement and in the will, the same silence both times, on purpose. Chapter 7. The 170 Clauses. Here's what you have to understand about that wedding. Jackie wasn't walking into a marriage. She was walking into a contract. And her own brother-in-law helped negotiate it. You've maybe heard the legend, the prenup with 170 clauses. Separate bedrooms in all 6 of their homes. A monthly cash allowance. A budget for round-the-clock bodyguards. A payout of millions if he ever divorced her. Now, be careful with that 170 number. It comes from a steward on the yacht who got bribed to sell his story, and Jackie's office called the whole thing fabricated. So the exact clauses, a servant's account. But, and this matters, an authenticated settlement document that later sold at auction proves a real agreement absolutely existed. So why would Jackie sign her life away like that? Cold, smart math. Under Greek law, a widow was automatically owed a fixed share of her husband's estate on a fortune worth around $500 million that would have come to about $62 million. By signing, she gave that up and took guaranteed cash now, plus a capped amount later. She was buying certainty at a discount. And why would a woman do that? Because she'd already sat in a passenger seat in Dallas and watched, in about 6 seconds, how fast a fortune turns into a widowhood. She was never going to trust an uncertain future again. But here's what all that money couldn't buy. The one thing the marriage was supposed to be about, his attention. Because his attention had belonged to someone else since 1959. Chapter 8. 2 streets apart. In Paris, Onassis kept an apartment, and a short walk away, same fashionable neighborhood, close enough to reach on foot, Maria Callas kept hers. According to his own personal secretary, the two of them never stopped seeing each other. Not after the affair began, not after the wedding. They couldn't stay apart, and the staff knew. All of them. His secretary described it. She'd call the house in the morning, and the staff would tell her, half laughing, that Mr. Onassis was very, very tired today. And when she asked why, Maria had come by overnight. Everyone in that house knew, including Jackie. She complained about it, quietly, to Onassis' own sister, and the advice she got, don't fight it, ignore it. So in public, Jackie stayed exactly the woman the cameras saw at the chapel, total control of her own face, giving nothing away. And I'll be honest, the cruelty in that household went well past an affair. There are darker allegations about medical staff Onassis kept on his payroll that I'll leave mostly alone because they're disturbing and some are contested. Just know the man was capable of real cruelty toward the women in his life, and the record on that runs deep. So picture it. Jackie had that clause, separate bedrooms in 6 houses, written right into her contract, and it was pointless. Because the bedroom that actually mattered was in an entirely different building. Chapter 9. The campaign to break her. And then it got worse. On the one patch of ground Jackie thought was completely private. In the early 1970s, on that island in the sea, a team of up to 10 photographers ran what can only be called an operation against her. According to the press at the time, they'd been hunting her for a year and a half, working out of motorboats, in wetsuits and diving gear, with underwater cameras, so they could surface near a shoreline she was sure no lens could ever reach. They caught her sunbathing, walking with no clothes on. The pictures ran first across 9 pages of a men's magazine in Rome. 3 years later, an American publisher bought the rights and ran them too. And that single issue sold out in days, jumping from a few thousand copies to over 2 million. It launched his whole empire. He called it the smartest money he ever spent. But here's the part that turns a violation into something much darker. Who set it up? One biographer names Onassis himself says he'd gotten fed up paying for his wife's privacy lawsuits and cooked up a plan to embarrass her so completely the press would have nothing left to threaten her with, while wounding the woman he'd taken to sarcastically calling the widow. In that telling, the maps of the island and the schedule of where she'd be, all of it came from him. That's contested. One photographer's daughter says her father acted alone. So take it as what it is, a plausible, disputed claim. But strip away the old word scandal and look at what's left. Intimate photos of a woman, taken against her will, sold for profit across 2 countries, and if that biographer is right, arranged by her own husband to break her. And the most photographed woman of the century had no court on earth that could call those pictures back. So she absorbed it, in public, in silence. The campaign to break her would only end when grief broke her husband first. Chapter 10. The Curse. January 22nd, 1973, his only son, Alexander, 24 years old, the heir he had built the entire empire for, is in a small plane that crashes on takeoff in Athens. He dies the next day. And this is the thing all the money couldn't touch. It broke something in Onassis that never healed. But watch what he did with that grief. He didn't turn it inward, he turned it on his wife. In private, he started calling Jackie the witch, convinced she carried a curse. The first important man in her life died, he'd say, then the second. And now my own son is dead while she's my wife. His daughter Christina, who'd called Jackie a gold digger from day one, poured fuel on it. So he spent his last year trying to end the marriage as cruelly as he could. He hired a lawyer to draft the divorce, confirmed by the lawyer himself, one of the few hard facts in this whole part. He hired a detective to follow her. He wanted to divorce her, but only, in his own words, after he'd made it as humiliating as possible. And all the while, his own body was collapsing. He had a disease that strips your muscles of the ability to obey. In his final months, he appeared in public with his eyelids literally taped open because he could no longer lift them himself. Sit with that image. A man who spent his whole life arranging how other people would be seen, and at the end, he'd lost command of his own face. Chapter 11. 2 Widows, 1 Winner. Onassis died on March 15, 1975. And here's the small, strange mercy in it. He died before he could file those divorce papers. So Jackie was still, technically, his widow. His willow was the last blow he aimed at her. He cut her down to the smallest amount Greek law would let him, a few million, and left the bulk to his daughter and a foundation in his dead son's name. Christina, who'd wanted Jackie gone since the wedding, fought her through lawyers for 2 years. In the end, Jackie walked away with about $26 million in exchange for giving up every other claim. It wasn't a victory. It was the price of leaving. But the real ending isn't about the money. It's a confession. According to Onassis' closest associate, in his final months, the man said it out loud. Maria Callas was the true love of his life. Marrying Jackie had been the supreme betrayal of Maria, and at the very moment his body gave out, he'd been planning to leave Jackie and go back to her. Callas outlived him by 2 years. She died alone in that Paris apartment at 53. Now set that beside what Jackie said in public when he died. She said Onassis had rescued her when her life was engulfed in shadows. That they'd shared beautiful experiences. That she'd be eternally grateful. Read it again. Not one word about love. Not one syllable about grief. Nothing anyone could ever quote against her. It reads like it was written by a lawyer, because that's who Jackie was. The man spent his whole life controlling what the world was allowed to see of him, and in the end he was outmatched by a woman whose discretion was the equal of his appetites. She lived 19 more years, and in her final months, dying, she did one last thing. She burned her own letters and photographs, by hand. A friend once said Jackie had 3 lives, a public one, a private one, and a secret one. The burning was her last edit. She made sure only the first one survived her, so think back to that rainy chapel in 1968. 2 children carrying candles. The most famous woman in the world, marrying a man nobody could understand her choosing. Now you know what she was walking into. And what it cost, the singer whose voice he broke, the son he buried, the sister he turned into a stranger, the wife he tried to humiliate right up until the day he died. He spent people his entire life. He learned it at 16, on the deck of a ship, watching his city burn, and he never once unlearned it. So here's my question for you. Between the man with the endless appetite and the woman who never lost control of a single word, who do you think actually won? Tell me in the comments. And if this one got under your skin, stay with me, the next story is even stranger.